Welcome to Rhinos and Aliens. Welcome, Rhinos and Aliens, to After Dark 45. And just like last week, Danielle was not able to make it, so I am going solo. Before we get into anything, I just want to say that today's episode includes a weekly update, shoutouts, corrections, some Buffalo news, politics, entertainment, randomness, video games, and sports. Like always, if Daniel was here, he would say before we get any further into the video, like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell, ring a ding ding. If you guys are wondering, I had a very forgettable week. It was busy, it was hectic, but getting into Easter, unlike last year, Dingus Day, at least in Buffalo, did happen because last year was canceled. But for the past 2 years, Dingus Day has been a shell of itself, and you're probably wondering why. Well, the reason is because, at least in Buffalo, Dingus Day had its route shortened, had the area where you could, quote-unquote, celebrate downsized, and the best part of all, it was a car parade. While you were in your cars, you technically had to social distance since it was a gathering of celebration. So in your own car, you technically speaking had to wear a mask and social distance from the people inside your car. I really don't know when people are going to say enough is enough, but I guess we're going to keep going on for the ride, at least in Buffalo standards. The Israeli artist that I mentioned last week, Noga Erez, her sophomore album got me through the week, and I'm officially hooked, addicted. It was my vice for at least the past week, and the 3rd, 4th, 7th, 11th, 12th, and 13th tracks are must-hears. They're just catchy, and they get you out of whatever funk you might be in for whatever reason. Now moving to shout-outs, I want to shout out Dania Bergoli, a.k.a. Bad Baby. I'm just going to put it simply like this. She is the embodiment of a person, let alone a woman, who turned being true to herself into 15 minutes of fame, and then turn those 15 minutes of fame into a lifetime, if not generations, of wealth. And if you have kept up with her, then you know all about her OnlyFans, but I just wanted to shout that out. Freshman Jalen Suggs for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. He's one of the best freshmen of the past couple years, and he hit one of the best game-winning buzzer-beater shots I've ever seen in college basketball in what is one of the greatest Final Four games I've ever seen. Now, sadly, as I'm going to mention further in the episode, it did not lead to a happy ending, but that game itself, that performance, that shot, absolutely incredible. If you have not seen it, at least go look up the highlights. Roy Williams, the former North Carolina Tar Heels coach, officially retired at age 70. And after 18 seasons with the Tar Heels and 33 seasons as a coach overall, he is officially putting it up. And I just wanted to shout him out because somehow, even during all these one and dones, for the most part, he recruited students that also were athletes. And what I mean by that, all his athletes stayed for at least 3 years. Most of them got their degrees. And every player who's ever been coached by him says the same thing. He cared more for you as a person and cared more about what you did as a student than what you did on the basketball court. And when you consider what he was able to get his kids to do on the basketball court, that makes you really think how much he truly cared about them individually. So I just wanted to give respects to him. I want to shout out Charles Barkley because he seems like he's one of the very few commentators, especially on a quote-unquote liberal station and a liberal show, that speaks his mind, speaks the truth while being as unbiased and down the middle as possible. And what I'm talking about is when he was discussing how, at the end of the day, politicians do not care about you. They only care about themselves. And no matter what they say, how they say it, what they do out in public, at the end of the day, be it Democrat or Republican, they're all out for themselves. And they only care about themselves, which is why their whole motive and the whole reason for them doing what they do is to divide the people. It's always about dividing the people. Do a quick research about where the Democrats and the Republicans come from. The true history of both the Democratic and Republican Party. And then you will truly understand why when people say Republicans, Democrats, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because they're both for the same team. It will make a lot more sense. Now, getting the shout-outs out of the way, we are moving into... It appears we only have one correction. So I guess that's good news. I wasn't clear enough last week when I was talking about Lana Del Rey's Chemtrails Over the Country Club. It was the number one selling album, meaning actual physical records and discs, but it was the number two overall Billboard 200 album, meaning records, streams, views, all of that compiled into one statistic. But now moving into Buffalo news, marijuana was officially made legal for recreational purposes in the state of New York. And this was the 15th state to make that official, which is surprising. Only 15 states have made that official. As of right now, all New Yorkers can smoke weed outside in the same places where cigarette smoking areas are allowed. They will be allowed to possess up to 3 ounces of cannabis. Soon, meaning within the next couple of months, New York adults will be allowed to grow cannabis plants at home. Grow up to 6 cannabis plants at home with a maximum of 3 mature and 3 immature plants per adult per household. However, do not expect licensed retailers to sell marijuana until mid to late 2022, roughly 12 to 18 months from now. Now, going specifically into Buffalo, the supposed plan is the revenue from the marijuana sales tax is going to be used for long-term plans such as universal basic income. Now, this is the kicker, of course. It's only going to be for neighborhoods and people that have been impoverished. So I hope when they say that applies to all ethnicities, just not, quote unquote, the black community, because many communities have suffered from the supposed the war on drugs. So we're going to see how that pans out. In terms of stuff going on with the revitalization of Broadway, Buffalo Public School number 44 is finally being turned into affordable housing apartment complex. And the plan is to have 60 total apartment buildings, 24 one-bedroom, 27 two-bedrooms, and 14 three-bedrooms. The project will cost roughly $26.8 million, and the project will be funded by state and federal historical tax credits. Construction will supposedly take 18 months to finish, and the construction will begin at the beginning of 2022, supposedly. And last but not least for Buffalo news, the Buffalo and Erie County Botanical Gardens is hosting its annual grape plant sale online with curbside pickup. So if you guys want any fresh plants ready for the springtime, you can get a variety of perennials, scrubs, hanging baskets, mixed containers, and tropical houseplants up until April 15th. So take advantage of that. And I had to mention that because my mama is Mother Nature out here. Now moving into politics. The U.S. is considering boycotts of the 2022 Winter Olympics taking place in Beijing, and it's specifically over China's human rights abuses. Now, saying you're going to do something and actually doing it are two different things. We're going to see where that goes. But if you kept up with anything going on in Hong Kong, let alone I guess it would be considered west-south area of the desert with all the slavery and stuff, then you will know why the United States not only could do this, but they should actually go through with this. California is pushing to vaccinate poor people before anyone else. Let that sink in, and then think to yourself, why would they do that? Why would they want the poor people to be the first ones to be vaccinated? Fully vaccinated citizens are able to travel within the states without tests or quarantine as long as they stay masked and socially distanced. Or another way to put it, get the vaccine and you still have to do the same thing that people who don't have the vaccine have to do. Sounds like a great proposition, right? So my question to you, why would I get a vaccine that was rushed, took only 9 months to actually be created and tested, and you still have to follow the same exact procedures as you would as a citizen who did not take the vaccine? The governor of Vermont has opened vaccinations to anyone over 16 as long as you come from an ethnic group that is not white. You have any European ethnic group, you are not available to get the vaccine. So once again, let that sink in. And if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure that violates the 14th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And if we're being technical and really want to get in the nitty gritty, that goes against the oath when you go into office. There was a few albums released. The only one that I was able to listen to was Demi Lovato's, holy crap, like 7th or 8th album. It is technically speaking her second best and might be her best album to date. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Now moving into entertainment, the theatrical business is slowly but surely getting its groove back. Godzilla vs. Kong continued to put up impressive grosses even during normal times. So what it's doing now during the pandemic is absolutely ridiculous. In some of the stats, during its second weekend, it grossed $76 million internationally, which is only a 39% decline. It grossed $44 million from China alone, which is a 37% decline. And just to put this in perspective, it is now the fastest non-Chinese film to gross 100 million, 150, 200, and $250 million internationally during the pandemic. It is the first film in China that's not Chinese to gross over 100 million since Frozen 2 of 2019. It is currently around 150 million as we speak. Domestically speaking, it had a 32 million opening weekend and 48 million 5-day start. It had the best opening day, it had the best opening weekend, it had the best 5-day start, and it was the quickest to get to 50 million, all domestically speaking. And it is currently at $300 million globally. Who knows how the film would have performed under normal circumstances with competition, but compared to its predecessors, it is performing as well, if not better, than it would have during non-pandemic circumstances. And when it comes to Netflix, they just keep spitting out that money. Netflix purchased the rights for the next 2 Knives Out sequels from Lionsgate for a whopping $450 million. $450 million. So on average, Lionsgate just made $225 million in profit, in straight profit, from Netflix for the next 2 Knives Out films. And I would say that this is yet another example of an old school Hollywood film breaking out only to be consumed and become another cog in the machine of what is now becoming the streaming wars. So that is a half empty, half full situation to look at. Going into random news, I came across something on Twitter, which gotta love the airports and the airlines. A family was kicked off of Spirit Airlines flight from Orlando to New York because their 2-year-old child wasn't wearing a mask while eating. By the way, the mother is 7 months pregnant, and the child that's only 2 years old is technically special needs. And the entire flight was deplaned. It's been over a year, and we're still going through this. Now moving into video games, Sony officially announced it's shutting down the PlayStation 3 PSP and the Vita stores. The PlayStation Store is closing July 2nd for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Portable, and it's closing August 27th for the Vita. You will still be able to re-download and play previously purchased game titles. So the big deal with this, you will no longer be able to purchase any type of media for those three systems PlayStation stores, but anything you've already purchased, you will be able to watch, play, re-download if that's what you wish. If you're a PlayStation customer and you have a PlayStation email, at the bottom of the email, right below the message about these stores closing, it says play has no limits. And when you think about it, that's actually quite ironic. And if you are a fan of just keeping your digital collection, or you like to go back to your older games every once in a while, that is a bittersweet knife just being stabbed right into you, metaphorically speaking. CD Projekt Red, they made it official that the dedicated AAA Cyberpunk multiplayer game isn't happening anymore, and it is completely reconsidering its approach to online content for all the IPs and all of its future games. Cyberpunk 2077 specifically got another patch. Its latest patch supposedly fixes 500 bugs. The sad part is that on average, the game is still not a consistently polished experience. Yes, we are officially in the era where patches take up more space than most full games do, and the most recent patch is 33 to 35 gigabytes. Yeah. Sony's MLB The Show 21 will be free for Xbox console owners through Game Pass, while still costing full price for all PlayStation console owners. It's very weird that the very first year that Sony's exclusive sports series goes multi-platform, that Microsoft throws down their big hanging balls and pays Sony whatever they had to pay them to get it day one on Xbox Game Pass, which is technically making the game free for anybody who has that service. Now moving into business, I wanted to discuss what potentially could be the next housing market bubble. I got 3 quotes to summarize what is being predicted. The first quote is, in many of the country's top housing markets, roughly 20% of houses sold are bought by someone who never moves in. Another quote is, limited housing supply, low rates, a global reach for yield, and what we're calling the institutionalization of real estate investors has set the stage for another speculative, investor-driven home price bubble. And last but not least, you now have permanent capital competing with a young couple trying to buy a house. That's going to make U.S. housing permanently more expensive. Basically, what these quotes are summarizing is that at the beginning of the pandemic, the housing market was very competitive strictly because of immigrants and new couples wanting to get a fresh start or a new home. For at least the past 6 months now, because the stock market has been skyrocketing ever since the pandemic, and most industries and quite a few stocks are completely overvalued. Pension funds, investing institutions, and all those types of businesses where they're trying to make their own profit, or they're trying to make a profit for their customers and clients, they're not making as much as they normally could because of all these overvaluations. So one of the best ways to make a profit, either for themselves or their clients, is investing in the housing market. Unlike the average person, they have all the money. So they're able to compete against each other and completely skyrocket the prices. But at the same time, some couples and some individuals are so desperate to get a new house that they're willing to compete. Whoever ends up getting the house, just like the stock market right now, is being completely overvalued. So I wanted to mention this beforehand. So if you start hearing this news trickle out, or you start noticing this in major cities, do not be surprised within 5-6 years we have another 2008, 2009 situation. But instead of it being the banks being the reason for this inflation, it's actually everybody else. Now moving into science, this is a quick thing about Elon Musk. His SpaceX Starship can't nail the landing just like the previous 3 prototypes. The SN11 prototype had a plumbing issue this time, so everything went according to plan until the Starship landed and it burst into flames, just like the previous 3 prototypes. This reminds me of any great invention. You fail, and you fail until you discover what is the perfect way to build whatever invention you want. You fail and you try again. Now moving into the sports section, we have a little bit of everything. MLB, the season started on the 3rd of April with all 30 teams back, but the key parts, they're supposedly going to play a full season, all 162 games. In the meantime, just after the season started, the MLB made it official that the All-Star game/weekend will not take place in Atlanta due to Georgia's voting law. I'm going to go more into this next week. I just wanted to mention that. Francisco Lindor signs a 10-year, $341 million contract with the Mets. By the way, first $200+ million contract the Mets have ever offered, and this is the 3rd highest contract in MLB history. So in typical Francis fashion, if you ever think you are doing something great, always put it in the back of your mind that you could always be greater, because are you making $341 million in over a 10-year span? Most people aren't. So just put that in your head as motivation if you ever need it. Now moving into college basketball, both men and women, the Baylor Bears absolutely dominated the Gonzaga Bulldogs from start to finish. Legit from start to finish. It was never close. They won 86-70, and sadly this ruined the Zags' chance of not only their first ever national championship, but the first undefeated season in over 40 years. So that kind of sucks, but most of the game it looked like men among boys. Now moving into the women's national championship game, much better game. The Stanford Cardinals defeated the Arizona Wildcats 54-53, which for the final 3 quarters, it was a great game. Stanford not only won their 3rd national title in program history, but their coach won her 3rd title as well, and this is their first title since 1992. Talk about consistently working on your craft and never giving up. Now moving into the NBA is looking into a few notable rule changes. First, drawing a foul while unnaturally jumping into a defender, and second is gaining a second coach's challenge if you happen to nail your first coach's challenge. Now, going back to the whole drawing a foul thing, I want to highlight the reason why this is such a big deal, because there are many defenders that are literally getting elbowed in the face, yet they're the one being called for the foul. And yes, I'm talking about when Schroeder for the Lakers got elbowed in the face by Curry, yet Curry was the one going to the line. I think I agree with Sebastian about that. That needs to change ASAP. Now moving into performances for the past week or since the last time I recorded. The Greek Freak posted a 47-point and 12-rebound game against Portland. Lonzo Ball goes for 27 points, 9 assists, and key thing, 8 for 15 from beyond the arc. And this season, look up the stats. He, at least statistically, is shooting as well as anyone in the entire league. Moving to Kuzma. Kuzma put up 30 points in a win versus Sacramento. Now, the next game against the Clippers, they didn't do so well, but hey, he is showing some promise. Nikola Vucevic goes off for 32 points and 17 rebounds against Indiana. Yeah, he's just a double-double machine. He really is. Kyrie goes off for 40 points and 7 assists against the Knicks. However, Harden did go down. Now, the extent of his injury isn't known for how long, but that could be a problem. No Harden and KD. The Nets aren't going anywhere. And now moving into the last performance is Curry. Curry erupts for 41 points. And the reason why I said erupts, because if you watch the highlights, they came so easy and so quickly. It's like a volcano. And to get into the stats, he went 14 for 21 from the field. 14 for 21 from the field. And 5 of those misses were from beyond the arc. He only missed 1 2-pointer, just to put that in perspective. And this was against Milwaukee in a must-needed win because the Warriors, yeah, they've been struggling. Last but not least, for the NFL, the Jets have officially traded Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers. Now, to be fair, what was it, 4 or 5 draft picks? None in the first round, but a couple seconds, it was a third and a fourth. If you're an organization, would you rather have kept Sam Darnold and got a ransom for the number 2 pick, which instead of 4 or 5 overall picks, you might have gotten 4 or 5 number 1 picks? Or do you want the number 2 pick and then a whole bunch of non-first round picks? That's up for debate. That depends on your perspective, what you're looking for. And I do not have any ending notes. So with that, we're going to go into Don Yo's famous 5-finger rhino thrust. So first and foremost, like the video, give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe. If you do subscribe, you might as well hit the bell so you stay notified about when we post anything and everything. Ring a ding ding. 4th, share. Share to anyone and everyone who you think might be interested. And number 5, comment about anything or everything that was stated in this video. How do you feel about what's going on in Buffalo? Do you like how they're revitalizing the neighborhood? Do you think the government should be revitalizing the neighborhood, or it should be the people themselves? How do you feel about the politics going around? It's been over a year, and we're still in this COVID, whatever you want to call it. And then how do you feel about all the sports going down and everything in between? So thank you very much. LLPH and Cadoodle.
Just a friendly reminder, guys. Hit the subscribe button in this corner. And then for the newest video. Then for the most recommended. And then for our famous dick pic.